Hello everyone, welcome along to the Race Room platform and welcome along to Porsche Community Legends, an opportunity for some of our better gamers in Race Room to have a great time, enjoy some community racing together and of course win some fantastic prizes as well and qualify through to our grand final in a couple of weeks. As you can already see, we are in the very classic 1990s Porsche 964 and a real passion for this, not just myself, but also my co-commentator for this evening, or this morning in Earl Bamber's case. Earl, all the way from New Zealand, it's looking like a good day over there. Everything's working for you.
Yeah, everything's working. Managed to get a bit of an upgrade during the week. New microphone and comms and stuff like that. So quite excited for this week, and internet upgrade. So hopefully we sound a little bit better this week. And it's awesome to see these cars on track, actually. It's the 964 is one of my favorite variants of the 911. So looking forward to some great racing.
A car that was first used in the very first Porsche Super Cup that started in 1993. Carrera Cup was running for a few years before that, I think about 7 or 8 years before that, but this was the car that was first used in the Super Cup. And you can see, as Earl will explain, you drive it in a very different way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from what we had last week with the 911 GT3R, which is one of the latest cars that Porsche make, now we're in the 964, which is one of the very first. Nearly no downforce. Tires are obviously from the 90s, so they're going to be sliding around a lot more. As you see, you can already see on screen how they're struggling a bit more, and they've got to work really hard. It's going to be fantastic for us because I think the racing is going to be absolutely phenomenal, though.
And we are at a little baby circuit that actually Earl Bamber's never raced at, but I have, weirdly. It was my very first racetrack that I ever did. My very first race was around the Silverstone National Circuit. Slightly different variants to what we have now, but a very small track, Earl, that doesn't really offer that many decent overtaking opportunities.
No, it's a really difficult one. It's a lot of high-speed corners still, so it's going to be tough to pick your spot on where you're going to actually overtake and pass, which is going to be particularly hard during the reverse grid race for these guys to try and make their way all the way back through the field. Obviously, last week we saw it was super important to get 2 good, clean races. The guys that won the first race but didn't have a clean run in the second almost didn't make it through on points to make it into the finale. So there's a little bit of tactics here, and I'm sure after week 1 everyone's learnt about how to do it even better.
A little reminder then that this is the second week of our Community Legends Challenge. The first week we were at Hockenheim and we saw 10 of the best drivers go through. Ben Spanky, who's known to be a very fast race room driver in whichever form of car, whether it be the front wheel drives or the rear wheel drives, he picked up the most points ahead of Jack Keithley for Williams, Moritz Lerner for Williams as well in 3rd position, Mark Gasser, Ermin Cihan, who of course was Turkish, not Chinese, a little running joke from last week, Julian Kunze, Martin Barner, Jesper Eriksson, Erhan Yajovski and Jacob Brzezinski, all through to our final in a couple of weeks' time, and therefore they don't need to take part tonight. I'm sure most of them are on the chat watching, and I'm sure most of them are already upset with how I've said their names. But we'll do our best this evening. We've got another set of effectively 20 qualified drivers through the leaderboard challenge, which is up and running right now for next week's challenge. But also we've got our influencers as well. And the format allows the influencers, if they are perhaps not quite as on the pace, to get themselves pole position for the second race, because race 1, a 20-minute race, then race 2, a full reverse grid race with the person who finished last on pole for the second race. And as Earl said, 2 clean races. You don't necessarily have to win both of them, but be clean, and then you can pick up enough points to be inside the top 10. As a reference, Jacob Brzezinski, who got through, only picked up 13 points across the 2 races, and so just being clean and picking up enough decent points is all you really need. My name is Ben Costenduras, Earl Bamber alongside me, and we're going to have a lot of fun for you this evening. Just a reminder, these might be beautifully simulated cars in the virtual world, but whilst we can't be in the real world, we thought we'd just give you a little bit of a reminder of what these cars look like in the real world back in the day, and it was incredibly hard to find any footage of these guys racing in 1993, but we managed it, so let's have a look. So there we go. A video not from the Carrera Cup, but in fact from the very first Super Cup that was won by Alfred Hager back in 1993. I wasn't that old, Earl, but I think you're a similar age to me. So you clearly have decent memories of that period because you were very excited when you saw that video come up.
Well, actually, I've just seen it because it's come up before for me on my Facebook page once upon a time, having a look at the classic races. And if anyone hasn't seen that full clip of that race, it's definitely worthwhile watching. It's absolutely incredible when they started fighting, and then eventually, back then they didn't have so much policing of track limits, and in that battle and fight, they started to edge a little bit more and a little bit more, and then by the end of it on the last lap, as you saw in the footage, they started just cutting the back chicanes there. There was the classic Hockenheim, the long circuit, and it was absolutely phenomenal to watch. And it was also amazing how strong the cars are, that they could take it in that short cup race. And back in the day, these cars are also a lot more tricky to drive in terms of there was a few more secrets to them. Obviously, you've got the H-pattern gearbox, and just the way that you shift, the way that you do that sort of stuff. There was all these sort of like small little idiosyncrasies that everybody knew about, and you sort of had to perfect. It was a little bit like driving a 996 GT3 Cup car. There was all these special tricks on how you'd shift up and stuff like that, without clutch or with clutch, and all that sort of carry on.
Just having a look at some of our influencers that are with us this evening. Rainer Held is there, as well as we saw Game and Muscle videos. Is part of our, there is Game and Muscle videos. James West, he'll be known as for this evening, his proper name, which is kind, because we also have Dave Gaming, who isn't called Dave Gaming on his passport, but either way, he still calls himself Gaming Dave when it comes to our races. So that is how you'll find him on our timing screens, Gaming Dave this evening. Now, I wanted to do something that we did in rehearsal a little bit earlier on. I was in control of the direction at the time, and we went on board. And Earl Bamber's reaction when we went on board inside the car was fantastic. Go, Earl.
Yeah, it's for me, it's awesome to see these cars on board. When you just look, first of all, there's no buttons on the steering wheel. Can you imagine? There's no buttons. And we're so used to, all these buttons, radios, pit lane speed limiters, everything. And you've got, basically just a road car steering wheel. And then obviously you see them fighting a lot more than last week. H-pattern gearbox, and also the position of that as well. It's really low to the ground. So it's just like the road car, which is also a special fact about these Carrera Cup cars, is that still today, the race cars are still built on the production line. I'm not sure if many people know, but when you go there, there's 1 or 2 Cup cars a day come along the production line, just like your 911s. And you see the regular guys that build the 911s putting together the race cars, which is actually really cool for them. And it's also a really cool fact that Porsche does. It's the only manufacturer that manages to achieve that. And it shows just how close what they've got on the racetrack is to the road cars as well. And then just the amount that they're moving around and sliding. If you see on the images already, people are sliding around and holding a drift around the corner and almost manipulating it to drift it to get it to turn even better. And I think that's why we talk about these special idiosyncrasies of how to drive these cars back then.
And that is why Earl Bamber is with us this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I never knew that. That is such a cool fact, that the cars are part of the road car production line. And of course, it means that if you do have a road car, you've got that link to the real race world as well. just having an opportunity to take a little look at the Silverstone circuit. We're going to be exiting practice in just a few moments' time and going straight into qualifying. Looks like the boys are having a lot of fun with these cars. I imagine that a little touch on the rear end is going to send them spinning when it comes to the racing.
Yeah, and as we come to the end of practice, it's always quite amusing right now that you see that traditional end of practice spinning and all that sort of stuff, which is quite funny, I find.
Welcome to the world, the virtual world. It's all nice and clean and during the races, but when it comes to the end, they all just want to crash into each other like Wreckfest. It's so bizarre. Right, into the serious stuff then. Qualifying. Tim Heinemann was a man we did not see last week, so new to the competition, and but a very, very well-known driver in race room, and we're going to follow him around the Silverstone circuit. As you'll see, if you don't know the national circuit, it comprises of about 3 or 4 corners.
Yeah, it's a very, very short, tight, twisty circuit. Looking at the practice, I think a good lap time was about a 1 minute and 2 seconds. That's what they're sort of looking for, and it's going to be interesting as well with the track limits. Again, last week that was always a talking point, especially at Hockenheim. But you know, just as the lap started, we've almost finished it. They're coming down straight to the final section of corners. It's going to be interesting to see who can be up the front. Obviously, each week we're locking in those top 5 drivers and giving the next 5 a chance. And as you can see, they've really got to try and manipulate and fight these cars as he aborts this lap and he's going to line up for another lap, trying to get that perfect run onto the front straight and start a lap. And that's also so annoying when you're doing this. I just started my esports career. When you start your lap and you're already losing time, it's a horrible feeling.
You get almost more information, don't you, in the virtual world than you would in the real world, in terms of how much time you're gaining and losing. The microsectors, I guess, are in a high-powered LMP or whatever, but not quite in the same effect as having a massive, great bar across your head saying you're slower, you're going slower than last time.
Well, actually, it's been really interesting doing it because the amount of information that you can gather is probably even more than what we can get sometimes out of the race car or faster. So I think our systems engineers are going to hate me when we come back with all the different ideas that we're going to come back from the virtual world. For instance, just a dashboard for me, when I get a yellow flag, the dash starts flashing at me as well, not just from the simulations. So that's also quite interesting. It's also a point for safety. Why can't we have our dash light up yellow? It's a good point.
I do think as we go back into the real world after all of this, I do think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the sim world. And I think we had a little discussion about that last week. And we've got plenty of time. We'll continue those kind of thoughts. Qualifying, 3 minutes through already. And our provisional pole man is Kirill Antonov in the 8 machine. Mobile One sponsored, blue and white. We've got to get used to a whole new set of colours for this week. There's a colour that's kind of lasted the test of time. The kind of the pale and dark blue of... go on, help me out here. Conrad, it's on the back. Conrad Motorsport, of course.
Yeah, it's quite a famous livery, and also I think you might like it because it's very similar colours to the Falcon Motorsports cars that you like so much. It is a really good colour, and also just looking at the times as DeMarco goes straight to the top with a 10th and a half, and I was just about to say how close everything is, and then he just smashes one out and gets a decent gap. But you know, from the top 15 drivers, only 6/10 of a second, and that doesn't sound well. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually such a little amount of time between everyone. If there's 6 corners, it's less than a 10th of a second a corner. And you know, if anyone knows about sim driving, that's a very frustrating amount of time to lose because it's such those micro little things to gain half a tenth there, a tenth there.
Interesting to see for some of our German influencers, not quite as up to pace around the Silverstone National Circuit as perhaps they were around the Hockenheim Grand Prix circuit last week. And you do tend to notice that the Brits gravitate to the British circuits and the Germans tend to race on the German circuits. And this one has some nuances. The weird Brooklands corner there. You kind of are turning and braking as you head towards the apex. You almost double apex, but there's not really much going in and out. And then Luffield here, you've got two opportunities to take different racing lines. In the race, you want to hug the inside because you don't want anyone up the inside of you. But I wonder whether in qualifying, especially in these cars, it pays to go in hot, allow the car to wash out a bit, and almost use the slide to slow the car down.
To be honest, I'm pretty sure you'd have to drive the car in the simulation because each different car is going to require different things. You can see coming out of the last corner there that they're always going very high right now, trying to diamond it back to get the run to begin the lap and try get an extra half a tenth or so. So, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they qualify with the driving lines and then they race as well. It's going to be two different things, which is always a bit of a challenge. And it's, to be honest, exactly the same as what we're doing in Super Cup. When you start the weekend, there's one driving line, but as you finish the weekend and Formula One goes out and stuff like that, the driving lines change, and a driving line is not a fixed thing. It's always moving depending on the grip and stuff like that. So you've always got to continuously search. It's a little bit like dirt racing. Dirt racing, you see it more pronounced because you really see them go high or low, or NASCAR. But we're also doing the same in circuit racing, but probably in a lesser of a manner. You need to really know what you're looking for.
Just over 4 minutes remaining. Time still ticking through. Very tricky in the sim world, as Earl, you'll testify, to understand what the rear end of the car is doing. Without the kind of the bum in the seat feel, you don't have so much of a connection with the rear end, and therefore to really get the maximum out of this car, you want to be sliding, you want that kind of slight positivity from the rear end, but to find the balance of too much slide and not enough in the sim world is so hard.
Yeah, I mean, in the sim world, it's really, really difficult. It takes a lot of time because we spoke about it last week. You're taking away a couple vital sensors when you're driving. Normally, you've got the G-force and the feeling, and you've got a lot more inputs to the body to judge what's going on. Rather in the sim world, it's a lot more 2D and a lot more digital. So it's actually much more difficult, and you've got to more or less rely on muscle memory and repetitiveness. So it's very, very difficult. You actually get quite the sweat up, and I've been driving I've started my sim career. I'm still trying to get my license points right now. But, when you do a day in the sim, you feel really mentally exhausted. It's really, really tough going. So what these guys are doing, going out and driving for 20 to 35 minutes in the reverse grid race and not putting a foot wrong, banging out those consistent laps, it is a real challenge. And they're almost like athletes, not so much from like a running point of view, but from a mental point of view, it's just the same as being a high performance athlete.
Here's Kirill Antonov from Russia. Lovely looking vehicle, that, the blue and the white Mobil 1 colours. They went properly on it with the logos, didn't they? They made sure that nobody was going to miss what company that was sponsored by. It goes a little bit wide out of Luffield and it's going to be ruin that lap. You can see that he was up by a tenth of a second through Sector 1, so he'd nailed Copse. And that is all that Sector 1 is, a 17-second kind of slight knockdown of gears. I wonder whether it is a brake. It will be a tap of a brake, if anything, through Copse. And then that's Sector 1 done. And then Sector 2 is the next corner, and Sector 3 is the last two. So such is a short lap. Antonov was the fastest man at the start of the session, but sadly he is now third, but less than a tenth behind. The top three separated by 700ths of a second. Half a second separates the top 18. And then, unfortunately, we've got the influencers a bit further back. I wonder whether, with the amount of, secondly in the second race, we may see some lappery going on, such as the short nature of the circuit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really tough to basically see what's going on. And also for the reverse grid race, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to make your way through. And traffic's probably going to be a factor, especially with how close it is. And also the draft is going to play a factor in these slower cars. If everyone's within half a second, it's going to be all lined up. And then also the other thing as well is that making one small mistake is really, really going to hurt you. You're probably going to get freight trained through and go back a long way. And with only half a second, it's not going to be possible to make up that lost time.
Nicholas Benfeld, 10th position right now. And second of the Germans. Plenty of German drivers in this race room simulation based out of Germany. although officially I think based out of Switzerland, but effectively a German company.
Yep, and I love this Mobil 1 livery, how someone's just managed to slap 3 Mobil 1 stickers on top of each other just to really make sure that we know it's Mobil 1 from the front.
Yeah. And I'm not sure it'd even be allowed right now. I think somebody might just say that's just taking the mickey, but it does look good, and Kirill's doing well. But we had a late entrant into the pole position. Wisniewski on pole, DeMarco second, Kirill Antonov has just improved up to third, Tim Yarshall in fourth, Kevin Siggy fifth. You'll know that name from plenty of sim racing competitions. Carlo Luciano Beldin in sixth spot. So we'll get through the full grid when we get to the racing in a few moments' time. But either way, it's close. Remember, this first race, 20 minutes long, so not a huge amount of time. That'll be around 20 laps, though, so plenty of work to do for these drivers. And we have limited damage, so they can get quite physical. We obviously do have one problem area for track limits coming out of cops on the outside. Pretty much everywhere else, you kind of get punished if you do go off track. So we just got to be careful. Waiting for all of our drivers to enter the lobby, into the race, and then we will be getting underway. Wisniewski then on the pole position was part of it, part of our race last week, and just missed out on qualifying. We'll want to make amends with 2 of his Williams teammates already through, and he's another man who participates in lots of different races. Right, Wisniewski, DeMarco, Antonio Yarshall on the front row. And off we go. Who's made the best start? It's not going to be a braking zone into the first turn. Antonov looks to the inside to try and get himself up into second. Looks like he might have been squeezed into the barrier on the inside of Cops. That's going to allow people around the outside for sure. There's Tim Heinemann a bit further back in the middle of the pack, but really coming into this second corner is where you then can actually make up some moves. And Heinemann looks to the inside. Needs to be careful not to run too deep into that turn. That was quite nice, actually. He managed to claim a couple of positions and get himself up to 8th spot. Good battle for second, though, just ahead of them. Yarshall's holding on, so he's made a fantastic move up into second with DeMarco and Siggy and Antonov now down in 5th position. There is Dennis DeMarco with Yarshall all the way around the outside. Now claim the inside line. You can almost sit on the apex there. A little bit of contact in the middle of the pack, and we expect to see that with muscling going on through the exit of Luffield. Now the sprint towards the line, and that is 1 lap done around Silverstone, and still plenty to sort out.
Yeah, isn't it fantastic? I mean, look at them. They're all lined up 3-4 wide at the beginning of that lap. They're sort of starting to sort themselves out, but that racing was absolutely fantastic. And what's awesome here is that you can really dive bomb someone from a long way back by just angling off the beginning of the corner, especially the sim world, and sort of rubbing them through the corner and making some moves. So I think this race is going to be spectacular the whole way through, as they've all panned out already.
Onto the back straight again, and a decent lead from Wisniewski right now. Further back, we see Carly Vega from France in 20th position, and mixing it with the influencers. But it's going to be one of those races where you simply do not know where to look at any given moment, because every time they come down to Brooklands here, great opportunity to be either on the inside through the left, but if you're on the inside through the left, you're on the outside through the right. And really, really tricky to make the moves stick through there unless you are super, super aggressive.
Yeah, I feel really sorry for our director tonight. I'm not sure he's going to know which car to follow and to click on. But, you know, we've had a fantastic start to the race. Wisniewski's got away and he's managed to probably break the toe, and he's managing to do nice clean laps right now as we see through the back of the field. Everyone's still fighting to try find their way right now, and this isn't going to stop for the next 20 minutes.
Steprinski moving himself up 2 positions there past Tim Heinemann and Luciano Bedin as well. They're still side by side. Hyman's managed to get himself back up ahead, and we'll have the inside line through Beckett's, but Carlo Luciano Bedin, I think, could benefit from going around the outside here if he's late enough on the brakes. He tries. Oh, look at that, you see. Now has he picked up the understeer mid-corner? Now just needs to have the confidence to jam it down the inside through Luffield. Oh, I have to say, Steberinsky being very kind and giving him lots and lots of racing room. It's Guillaume Triquier just behind, who's got a great view of all this and a good slipstream onto the main straight, but kind of nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go, and now he's going to be on the outside, the first corner, and that's not a place where you want to be to try and make a move. As you'll see, it's not possible. And the thing is, when you're trying to make a move here, if it's failing, you're generally then susceptible to the guy behind you. And the lap times are also close, so they're all lined up in a train. As we spoke about, you can just get freight trained and lose a bunch of spots and can't get back into the spot where you want to be.
Saw a spinner there on the outside of Copse. Easy to do if you want to try and keep the lock on. I think it was Fleury who's down now in 27th spot, although DeMarco's 26th, and he was one of our fastest men in qualifying. So a horrible first race from DeMarco. Has to be one of the favourites to have qualified through.
And we didn't really see what happened to him, to be honest. As another one goes around. That's car number 22, having a spin there.
I think that was Honzik. He's been... No, it's Alejandro Verle, who has gone to the tail of the field from Brazil, apparently. Doesn't sound much like a Brazilian name, but he's managed to recover, 25th position. But all of these guys will get us another chance to be at the head of the field when we have our reverse grid race, which is a longer race for race 2.
Yeah, and someone like Dennis DeMarco, if he stays there, he's probably definitely one of the hot favourites to win the reverse grid race, obviously with how well they qualified. But remember, it's how you... Oh, and that's a big move there by car number 15, and now he's going to get hung out to dry as the entertainment continues up and down the field. But obviously, only the top 15 score points in these races, so you've got to try and make sure you score points in both of the races.
Yeah, so that was Steve Alvarez, otherwise known as Super GT, who is leaving it late and doing a bit of a lunge on the brakes. This might be a track he's actually done in real life as he goes side by side. He's on the outside for Luffield, and you can see just how much time you lose if you try and hang it out around the outside. You're better off kind of bailing out of it. He is the second best of our influencers right now. Jaroslav Honzik is in 15th, but I don't really count him as a proper influencer because he's got such experience in race room. Good battle just ahead of Super GT as well.
Yep, and now he's looking like he can try and capitalise. Let's see what happens. Is he going to try that same dive bomb that he tried last lap? Or not quite out of the back straight. He's going to get a run on it though. And he can also gear this week. They're a lot more on and off the throttle. They're trying to manipulate the car and what they're doing. And it seems like a really, really tough challenge. It's interesting to hear on how they enjoy driving the car from the GT3R that we had last week.
A massively different challenge, and next week we completely switch it up again. A brand new car for race room, the RSR used in the WEC Championship, and Le Mans is now part of race room. Bit of contact, and I think that was... Yeah, Carter's disappeared off our timing screens. So Hedy Cart was heading to the pit lane effectively, but not off his own choice. RSR next week, Spa-Francorchamps next week. I can tell you I'm 500th qualified at the moment. That does not allow me to get in. I'm about 5 seconds off the pace though, such is the competitive nature of these leaderboards. And if you're watching right now and say, hey, I fancy a go in that, get yourself into race room, get yourself onto the leaderboard. It actually costs you nothing to do it, and you can get yourself into a qualifying position, and perhaps you can be on this stream next week, and we can be talking about you. Here's Tim Yarshall. I don't think we saw him last week either for Euronics Gaming, and such was the kind of the competitive nature of what was going on last Tuesday. He's second, and he's now clawed his way up to the back of Wisniewski. Nikodem is a very well-known gamer across all platforms, and always at the sharp end, but sometimes buckles under pressure. So if Yarshall starts to give him a bit of a push, we may see that change. Here's Tim Heinemann looking up the inside of Siggy, and that's the way to do it, touring car style.
Yeah, that was a bit brutal, but to be honest, he's probably run into the back straight, and I think he might get bogged up, and with the guy just passed isn't going to be very happy as he blocks. He's trying to block, and now the classic move is to try to go around the outside. As he does there, is that Tim Hyman in the 14?
Yeah, we're watching Tim Hyman. It's Siggy just behind, and then Luciano Bedin just behind in. Oh, and Bedin's found a bit of space through Luffield. Perhaps a bit of muscling going on. These plastic bumpers will be being, the paint will be being scraped off them going through the Luffield sequence of turns. It's one of those circuits that you kind of have to make your own space, if you like, and manipulate your way past, because even the braking zones, they're not straight, they're not easy to make your move stick, and therefore a little bit of contact always helps. It's naughty.
Yeah, it's naughty. They're lucky that they're on, we call it minimal damage on it, so they can rub each other up in the game. And also, the braking zones are short as well. They're not a long braking zone. If you get a chance, like Hockenheim, really dive on the way in. They're a very short, sharp braking zone, which also makes it a big challenge to be able to make a big difference to brake that 5 meters later than your competitor and really get the move up. So it does make for fantastic racing for us, though, where everyone's sort of trying to nudge each other out of the way in some of these flashing slower corners.
Guillaume Triquet was under pressure there in the green machine. There he is, just at the front of the screen there, but managed to hold off the attentions of Bo Dixon, a man that we saw last week, and will be hoping to get himself into the top 10 qualifiers, as we saw. I think he was about 11th or 12th last week. Here's Joaquim Llorena, another man we saw last week in Argentina. What kind of time is it in Argentina right now? I suppose it must be kind of mid-morning, something like that. Or maybe I've got my time zones completely wrong. But we do have an American. We've got Jack Porsche, as he's known in this race, just ahead of him. Jack Porsche is actually known as Jack Harrison in the real world. I don't know quite why he's decided to change his name for this race, but it kind of makes sense, I suppose. Llorena looking to the inside of Mr. Porsche, but can't make it stick. And I'm not sure that's a classic livery from Jack Porsche. That's kind of more of a throw to what we're seeing today, that livery, the Tag Heuer 33 car. And now it's 3 for the lead. Wisniewski, Yarshall and Antonov. Antonov, one of the fastest men in qualifying. They'll be looking to try and make this pass clean as we've just ticked over halfway through the race. They're doing very well about sticking within track limits through Copse, because it's not an easy corner. It kind of sucks you in on the wrong, well, certainly does to me, on the wrong line, and that's a challenge for the lead. Down the inside, Yarshall takes it from Wisniewski. Wisniewski's now on the outside, and watch Antonov, who's going to have a better run all the way down the Wellington Straight, and he'll now try and find a way past into Brooklands. Oh, but Wisniewski's got a good slipstream too. Not quite close enough to make a move, but with the contact that happened, I am sure that Wisniewski will not forget that, and he will try and open the door when he needs to a bit later on in the race, if he can keep up with the pace of Yarshall.
Yeah, and that was a fantastic move for the lead. He's been working on it for a couple laps, just hunting down the leader, and now I think we're going to see an almighty battle for these podium spots here.
Over the line. Got to turn in late for Copse, which allows the exit to open up for you. If you turn in too early, it kind of feels very tight, and you end up running out of the circuit. And it's a classic kind of rookie mistake, isn't it, Earl? I mean, you may have sat beside people who have not got the same experience as you, but turning in early so you've got the confidence that you're going to make it through the corner is a kind of a classic beginner's error.
Yeah, definitely. And also, as you arrive there, it's such a high-speed corner, you sort of get that tunnel vision, and it really invites you to turn in early. So basically to tell someone, wait, and then turn in late. And also, it's a big run up to Maggotts and Beckett's after that, after that first corner. So especially in one of these cars where it's a lot slower, it's definitely a break. You've got to get the exit well. That's the biggest thing I'm struggling with in iRacing right now, or in virtual racing, is I get terrible exits. I think I'm going really good on the way in, and then I just lose everything on the exit.
There's definitely a specific way to race in the virtual world versus the real world. There is a massive crossover, and you can use the same controls, but it does seem like there is a special way to get the very best out of these machines. And we see that from some of these guys, side by side behind Yarshall, as Antonov muscles his way past Wisniewski. Wisniewski's getting bullied here. He's obviously not quite got the race pace that he had on that one lap in qualifying, and he hasn't been really able to hook these laps up. He looks to the inside. Oh, Antonov's really, really wide, and maybe too wide, but he holds the inside line for Luffield.
Yep, and now he's going to try cross on back, and he's given him a nudge. He's given one, but he doesn't get the run on him, and that was really, really fair racing. And as we said, all of a sudden, Tim Heidman's catching these guys up, and with the lap time so close, when they start to battle, they lose so much lap time. It really allows other people to catch up, and these onboard shots, I'm still loving the onboards.
Q director, more onboards for Earl to keep him happy. Here's Jack Porsche. Oh, losing the rear end through Copse. I think he might have had to get out of the throttle there because Bo Dixon was a bit slow on apex and came out the throttle to keep and catch the car. But so many people behind him that he's now dropped down into 9th position. Kevin Siggy's down in 6th, so he's had a problem as well.
Yeah, and quite a few of the fast guys that we spoke about earlier in the race, they're really having some big issues during the race, the guys that qualified at the front. And just following another guy that should have been up the front, DeMarco's slowly making his way back up almost inside the top 20 again now. But, with only 5 minutes left in the race, any chance of getting back into the points is nearly gone for him, unfortunately.
Jaroslav Honzik, best of our influence. Oh, he's not best of our influences, actually. James West, just on the inside here, is holding the inside line. Great move there from Gamer Muscle, because he sat on the apex so that Honzik couldn't turn in, basically. Hung him out to drop.
But this is an almighty fight between our influencers, and we talk about the race lead, but how about the race of the influencers as they go down into the first quarter, blocking, moving around on the track, and who's going to prevail out of Copse here?
So you've got Gamer Muscle, you've got Yaroslav, and then you've got Xavier Sanchez as well, better known as... Oh no, it's not on my notes. I think he's Heike 360, isn't he? Again, Honzik looks to the inside a little bit. Gamer Muscle very late on the brakes. Weirdly though, that line kind of worked because it gives you a little bit of a slingshot onto this back straight. Not enough though, because there's a serious amount of attention on his engine and gearbox as they come now down into the braking zone.
Yeah, I'd love to see all these guys right now, their live twitches or their faces as they're all fighting each other. And this is what's fantastic about that track. You can still hold it around the outside as they're going high and then, rubbing each other off the exit of the corner. This is fantastic battling between all the influencers and making a better race of it than the top 3.
Such a problem there, though, in Luffield. If you do go in a little bit hot, then you open the door and invite somebody to throw it down the inside, and all of a sudden you lose a position. Still side by side into Copse. Sanchez is very early on turning. He's going to run a little bit wide or have to get out the throttle, but it's kind of okay right now. You're just going to make sure you don't open too much of a door into the next braking zone. Gamer Muscle, for the moment, is okay as we look a bit further back. And Super GT's there as well. We've got Super GT, we've got Gaming Dave, we've got Honzik, we've got Sanchez, and we've got James West, Gamer Muscle, all together.
Yeah, and we've also got a fantastic fight at the front. The top 4 are sort of compressing themselves with 3 minutes to run, not much time on the clock, and we might see these almighty fights for the last couple spots on the podium, as we thought the leader was going to get away, and now he's not, and they've, again, compressed themselves up. So fantastic fights really up and down the field.
Virtual racing continues to deliver. Every single time I get on stream and start commentating, the racing is frenetic, it's invariably fair, and it is so good, with almost always tight finishes. And we're no different here this evening in the Community Challenge on Race Room. Look at this. Tim Yarshall is leading. Kirill Antonov looks to the inside for second position. Can't find a way through there. Wisniewski third, Heinemann fourth. They're all in a queue. Look at the work that Antonov is doing to keep this car in the right direction.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is that they're just waiting behind each other for a draft, sizing up, because they know that they're not going to break away and get a 5 or 10 second lead in these cars. And I wonder how much, a little bit like Formula Ford racing, that they're just sizing each other up, waiting for this last 2 laps to see where they're going to make their move. a little bit of a bump and run at the last 2 corners or something like that.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the Brooklands on the last lap could be a scene of disaster with these guys so close. Antonov looks to the inside. There is an opening. He can get down the inside. He tries to hold it so there isn't contact, and he's done a very nice job of that. But running it around the outside is Tim Yarshall. He wants the inside line for the next corner. He's squeezed onto the grass, and here comes Wisniewski. He's got the momentum. He hasn't had to back out the throttle. Wisniewski's going to go to the outside at Brooklands, but he's not quite close enough, and he's not going to be close enough necessarily to have the overlap.
Yeah, so just as we started speaking about it, they've all erupted into this huge battle. So, I think there's going to be 1-2 laps to go. It's going to be interesting when they cross the line, but there's probably 2 laps remaining in this race. And I think now the tactical battle of chess and a bit of warfare of how they position themselves for these last 2 laps is going to be great.
At the tail of the field, Antoine Fleury is looking like he might be on pole position for the next race, although I see Fail Race has just had a fail and dropped down to 26th position, so he could be on the front row for our second race. DeMarco is going to be very strong from 25th, but will that be enough points if he takes the victory to get qualified through into the final? And the final will be a voted track and a voted car, and a lot of Porsche factory drivers taking part alongside our qualifiers. Beautiful slide.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I think he had a dive. I think that was one of the first big dives that we saw, the way he slid through the apex there. So I think we're going to nearly be on the final lap this time by. We'll have to cue the director to tell us how many more laps left in the race. But it's a fantastic battle. And obviously, if you're going to go for a move, you could potentially get kicked off the podium with how everyone's just lined up behind each other right now.
I think that is time up. So the flag next time through. What can Tim Heinemann do from 4th position? He's slowly getting closer and closer to this. Go to the outside line. That's a very unusual place to try and overtake. He's going to have to be very slow on apex. That could be a mistake from Heinemann, because look at this. Cars in front of him are going to drive away.
Yep, and it looks like at the front, I'll be loving to see the first and second, what's going to happen down in these last 2 corners here is everyone's going to try throw it in super deep and late.
No moves in the last lap. I was expecting that to be absolute chaos, and it wasn't. It's been clean. There's a little bit of contact between Yarshall and Wisniewski mid-corner at Luffield, but Antonov had enough space not to be challenged as they come towards the line. Presumably, this is not the last lap. Yes, it is the last lap. Where's the flag? There's the flag. I was right. Kirill Antonov has won it. Yarshall second, Wisniewski third, and Tim Heinemann fourth. Kevin Sicki was on the tail of that group by the end in 5th spot. Luciano Bedin in 6th. Temprinsky 7th. Triquet, Bo Dixon, and Jack Harrison rounds out the top 10. And it will be Antoine Fleury and Dennis DeMarco on the front row of the grid for our second race. Who was the best influencer in the end? It was Cayman Muscle in 16th spot. So where did Super GT end up? 24th. So obviously a little issue there. Those boys having a lot of fun end of race. And here comes the man who will be your pole man. Frenchman Antoine Fleury is going to find himself in a traffic jam at Cops because all the boys are having a lot of fun. Antonov, Yarshall, Wisniewski, Hyman, Siggy, Luciano Bedin, Temprinsky, Triquet, Dixon, Harrison, Urena, and then the rest of the field. But look at that, just 12 seconds separating the top 12 drivers.
Which is going to make it a fantastic race for the second race. Longer one, 35 minutes, but only 14 seconds, 15 seconds separates the top 15. How are you going to actually pass? And if you looked at the fastest laps, everyone was within 0.2 of a second on quickest lap as well. So this is going to be a frenetic battle for the guys in last place, starting on the couple back rows to get through.
Just waiting for all of our drivers to log in to the server for a second time. And interesting, if you approach this race in a different way. 20 minutes is a proper sprint race, but 35 Do you kind of pace yourself a little bit? You don't want to be battling that intensely for 35 minutes, surely.
Well, no, I think you've got to go. And we saw last week the winner of the first race. As we go, looking for the lights.
Ready to go racing for another time. A typical freeze. We are underway, heading towards the first corner for the first time, and it is Fleury who's taken the advantage. DeMarco in second. The midpoint of the field, though. Everyone seems to have got through the first corner.
Yeah, and if you're at the back of the field, it's a chance where you could make massive positions on the guys around you, but it's also the chance where you could have a massive one, as we see everyone having a massive one, just as I say it, and basically lose all those spots. So, you know, it's a really, really tough one. Oh, as we see another one go around, and this is absolute carnage today.
That is really very messy, but I can see Kevin Ziggy in the 10th position already. He's still at the very tail of the field. And Ziggy is going to be right up there when it all shakes out. Triquet in 9th spot, Frenchman. And Heinemann in 10th now. So really good progress made at the very tail of the field. Marco's put himself into the lead of the rail. Fleury down to second. Ziggy in third. And then Rain in 4th spot as we're watching. And decent space between those front 4 or 5 already. It'll be time to focus on those leaders. Antonov in 11th. Nesky in 12th. Ziggy 13. Wow, they are already through, and here they are.
Yeah, and how did Tim Heinemann get to P10? That's also phenomenal from nearly the last row of the grid. So big movers, actually bigger movers than what we saw last week on the first lap from the reverse grid race. So obviously, with all that carnage, they've managed to find their way through.
And one man that was caught up in that carnage, Tim Yarshall, 24th position. And that could be, well, I thought a win from race 1 would give him a decent amount of points, but is he in danger of not qualifying if he can't pick up points for this second one?
Yeah, definitely. We saw how close the points were last week, and last week's race 1 winner, you have to correct me on the name, had an issue in the second race and almost didn't qualify. He just scraped through by getting through into the top 15, but almost didn't qualify. So that shows how important basically a double point score in both these races is.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was now.
Kevin.
Jack Heatley, I think it might have been, wasn't it? Jack ran away in race 1. He picked up a couple of points by the end.
I could tell you the livery. I couldn't remember the name, though, if that sounds really bad.
That's all right. You're a photo person. You're a picture man.
Actually, the livery that I like the most in this, if you've seen it on screen a little bit, is the number 1 car, which is actually a throwback to a Hugo Boss livery, where it's supposed to be the pinstripe of a suit, which is awesome to see. If you see it on screen, that's what that livery is. It's pinstriping of a suit.
Why did they not run any kind of thing that said Hugo Boss? Because I was wondering exactly what it meant.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because I know a friend of mine ran Le Mans in that same livery, and it just had a very small Hugo Boss, and from the top side you can see what it is.
I like that. It's kind of classy, isn't it? Rather than just put massive logos everywhere, do it a little bit more subtly, try and put a story behind it. Whoa, that's
what a move!
Tim Heinemann. Is it?
Yeah, that was Tim Heinemann. That was a huge move.
I correct myself from earlier. Tim Yarshall finished second in the first race. Obviously, Kirill Antonov finished first. He's in 13th. So actually, Yarshall really will need to get some points in this second one. 13 points, in fact, from the first race was enough to get yourself into the top 10. So Heinemann has 13 already from 4th in race 1. Tim Yarshall has 20, so he may well be safe enough to get through, but on the back part of it. And it's side by side here with Triquet and I think that is Sanchez in the same liveried car running side by side. Good to see. Where's DeMarco?
Yeah,
if this is Antoine Fleury, where is DeMarco gone? He is checked out.
Yeah, DeMarco has checked out, but remember, he was one of the quickest qualifiers and started off the front row, and he'll be having a clean race easily. So he's going to be an interesting one with how far down he finished, and if he gets a win, where he's going to sort of balance out, and he could be one of those sort of upsets on the points as well for some of these guys.
Good to see that Super GT holding his own in third position right now. Not one of the guys that have lost too much time. I think they gained so much in that chaos in lap one that they've given themselves a decent bumper here to survive a little bit longer, these influences. His Rai in 7th spot, but now Sanchez is starting to creep in on him. But there's a decent gap to the leaders. Two of them are kind of fast race one.
Yeah, and when we talk about like being off the pace, we're talking about 2 or 3 tenths of a second. So with these big gaps after the first couple of laps, it's not like someone's going to be able to drive their way back up through the field like we saw in Hockenheim last week. It's going to take a lot of laps and a lot of time to sort of edge away just to gain back, 2-3 seconds.
Steve Alvarez, Super GT.
And as we follow the cars around the track, obviously, it's very, very tough in the battles up and down the field. As we see Tim Heinemann, very, very impressive on screen. No, sorry, our race one winner, making his way through the field, already inside the top 10. We've only had 5 minutes in this race so far. So basically, a good chance for all these guys, I reckon, to get inside the top 5.
In position, Franzov. Sanchez just been proposed, given the 12th position.
Yep, and the battles up and down the field just continue as we see James West, gamer muscle, as he calls himself in the gamer world, trying to hold his own and slowly getting pushed back down the field. And, I'm just loving these cars and absolutely loving the battles that we see up and down the field. It kind of makes me wish that I was out there and going to give it a go. I think I might have to go try the new RSR at Spa and see where I can end up in the world ranking and see if I can beat my commentator, Ben.
I hope you do, Al. I'd be disappointed if you don't. I really would.
Maybe that can be the running joke next week, as we can see who can get the highest score at Spa.
I've only ever raced a Spa for real in a smart car. Did I say that last week? I can't remember. But yeah, it's not really representative of RSR, that's for sure. Handles slightly different.
Yeah, I could imagine it would handle slightly differently.
Kirill, what? Someone needs to model the smart race car on RaceRoom. That's the next commission, I think. I'll personally fund it. Kirill Antonov up to 8th position ahead of Wisniewski. So Wisniewski, one of our leading contenders in race one, being passed by another of our leading contenders. Wow, that was put into Cops, and that didn't work out. It was that ahead of our Bulgarian friend, who I can't say, Alexei is his name. He went super hot into Cops. It didn't work out for him.
Yep, as we see, slowly there's going to be a battle for the lead, actually. Just like race one, the leader hopped away, and then the man in second place slowly edged his way back into the game to have a big battle for the lead.
Vega now to the inside. Oh, and gets muscled out of the way from Tim Heinemann. I think that's kind of how they have to do it. Pay no attention to the paperwork of your 964 and just kind of throw it down the inside. It seems to be working right now.
Definitely, and Tim Heidman's made such a massive charge up through this field because he's on the tail of 5th place, and I reckon he's probably going to round up the 5th place man in the next couple of laps, and he's probably got a chance here for a podium. If you look at the distance, the podium is not that far away.
Well, just half decent points would be good. Alvarez, I see now, has dropped himself down to 4th, so I got to get the feeling that the top 3 were watching last week and realised that as long as you get one half-decent result, you can qualify through the top 10. So once they'd had that spin early doors, they knew that if they had a decent grid position, they could have a decent finish position in the second race. I mean, we've still got 25 minutes left, even more time than the whole of race one. But Tim Heinemann is coming for sure, and he's got himself now up into 5th position. But they still look in a decent spot to pick up enough points for, let's say, well, Fourth spot gives you 13 points, and 13 points was enough to get you in the top 10 last time at Hockenheim. So that will be kind of your aim.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole aim of this each week is to make it to the finale, to basically book your ticket into the final to race against some of my colleagues and the other factory drivers, which I can't wait to see all them go in here, because that's going to be, I think, an absolute laugh, to be honest, just to see where they all match up. And then obviously to book yourself in the final and to give you that chance to win the prizes and to win the overall title. Obviously, no one knows which car we're going to end up in as well, which is going to be even more of a challenge. I'd like to see two different cars on two different tracks. That would be cool. Just throw them in there. And as we see Antonio Fleury slowly catching Dennis DeMarco for the race lead, and with 25 minutes to go, it's going to be an almighty battle between these two. They're sort of checked out from the rest of the field and slowly pulling away. As we see a battle here for the.
And yeah, is this the battle for the best influencer at the moment? I think it is. I know, other than Super GT, who's up there in fourth position. This is Rai versus Sanchez. So that is Heike 360. And Heinemann up to fifth. Just saw a change of position around there. It wasn't Heinemann who's changed position though, maybe a bit further back. Antonov and Vega swapped spots. So Super GT then, under pressure from what would be a kind of guaranteed qualifying spot, and that was kind of him, wasn't it? He left a whole village on the inside of him from the apex to allow Hyman up through.
Yeah, and that was unfortunately. I think he just got rounded up. I felt a little bit sorry for him. He was sort of like a mobile chicane. I think my teammate was described 2 weeks ago in the iRacing race. Was that you, or was that Hindhoff that described him as that?
I can't remember. Probably me.
it made my best tweet ever, to be honest. I was so excited to call Lawrence Vanthor a moving chicane.
Then that's the kind of banter I can't wait to see on the finals of this competition, with all the new drivers having a bit of fun.
Well, actually, what's great is I'm the only one that can talk, so I can do all the banter I like. So I think I'm going to nominate that minimum Vanthor should come drive.
And actually, as one of the Porsche Works drivers, I would say he's probably in the top 3 of the Porsche drivers in terms of success. I'd say you've got the alien, which is Ai-Chan Guven, the Porsche Junior driver, who is a bona fide gamer. But then outside of that, Tandy's kind of on and off. He enjoys a bit of gaming and has a bit of success. And then Banthor's got really good the last couple of weeks. I can't think of anybody else really that would be in that group of 3.
No, I think, actually, Matt Campbell and Jackson Evans, I know they do a lot of gaming. Obviously, Porsche Young Professionals and Juniors, but they do a lot of gaming as well in the background. But I think we should nominate like Tandy and Vanthor, just so Tandy can keep beating Vanthor at it, and also Guven, because it would be really interesting to see how Guven goes against all the gamers in this platform as well, because he's really one of the top-notch drivers in sort of sim racing world as well.
Yeah, exactly. Can he transfer those skills between platforms, like some of these guys, like Kevin Siggy, for instance, a couple of days ago was racing on one platform, and now he's in here, and he'll be somewhere else the next week. That's kind of the skill, a bit like driving in the real world, your rear-wheel drives, your touring cars, and then single-seaters. If you're able to switch around, and if you're able to throw rally into that as well, someone like, I don't know, Stefan Sarazan for me is one of the legendary drivers, simply because he can rally as well as he can race.
Yep, definitely. And, obviously when you cross codes as well, you do pick up things, you do learn other skills. So I always encourage people to just drive whatever you can. And that's what's really cool about this format. We're driving different cars, different Porsches every single week. Is really, really fantastic. And obviously you see different guys in being better or worse in the different styles of these Porsche cars. Obviously the Cup car here from 993, totally different to what we had last week, which is in the GT3R, one of the most advanced cars that we've ever built technology-wise.
So who else should we nominate? Should we get some old boys into the finals? Perhaps Lotterer or Gianni, as they've been forced into the sim world thanks to their participation in Formula E. I think Lotterer has done a little bit, but every time I've seen Gianni do any sim racing, he hasn't been particularly successful. But as you know, they're very well-known Porsche drivers. They should be part of it, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. They should come join as well. So we've got 5 already. How many do we need?
I think 10.
Oh, perfect. We'll find some others. We'll think of some others. We've got next week to get the other 5.
I'd like to see Romain Dumas, but I'm pretty sure that he doesn't do any kind of sim racing. But Dumas he's another one of those legends.
No, he had a sim. I saw a picture on Twitter, and he's got a sim. So there's no excuse that Dumas can't join.
Right, there we go. Great.
What about Timo Bernhard? No one's seen Timo. We should get Timo. Oh, as we see a big fight here.
Yeah, that was Alexi trying to get past Super GT. Super GT has become a bit of a cork in the bottle now. Unfortunately, they've started to catch up with him, and the field is slowly getting past. So Steve's now down to 8th position. He's just been passed by Alexi. Antonov's gone through, Wisniewski and Heinemann have gone through, and that proves just how bad a start we had from Tim Yarshall. Although Yarshall now up to 12th position, that's a really good effort. And in a few moments' time, our producer will start inputting these positions into our Excel spreadsheet, and then we'll find out who's qualified. But Yarshall, I think, is safe just because of his race 1 performance. The guys that aren't safe from race 1, I would say, are Kevin Siggy, Bedin, Stemperinski, Triquet, Dixon, and Harrison. Those guys need a bit more points to get through.
Yeah, definitely. As we just saw also, DeMarco had a bit of a drama. I haven't seen it image-wise, but I see it on the timing screen that he's dropped from the lead down to P3. So he's had a bit of a drama, and he's got Tim Hyman right on his tail right now as we watch Kevin Siggy trying to carve his way through the field. And I think he's going to eat up the next couple of cars in front of him as well.
Down towards Kops then. We're about, I suppose, now about halfway through this race. Honzik to the inside and passes Bo Dixon. That's a good example of just how good Yaroslav is. Javier, pretty much, for me, is a real bona fide racer. He is one of the best in this platform, and whilst he is now focusing his attention on YouTube and getting his numbers up there, he is definitely one of the best guys, and was surprising actually not to see him qualify. He's being helped along quite a lot here by Bo Dixon, so much so you can actually see inside Bo's bumper, but somehow he has stayed ahead there.
Yeah, a bit of bump drafting, I'd say these guys are doing right now, trying to get everything they can out of these Porsche 964s around the Silverstone Circuit. And I've actually loved the race. I've actually enjoyed the racing more this week. I don't know about you, but I still love the onboard. Look at that. Speedo, tacos. You don't even have a lap timer.
There must have been one that you plugged in with a bit of cable and kind of, a third-party add-on.
In 92? Do you really think? In 92?
Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I reckon it was a pit board, mate.
Not a great place to have a pit board at Silverstone because your focus is completely in the wrong place as you come around Woodcote. Lots of physicality between Heinemann here and DeMarco. DeMarco does not want to allow Heinemann past. That's the third hit between the two of them. It's getting very physical, and Heinemann needs to make sure that he picks up some points, I think, so he doesn't want to get binned here. Although I have to say, I was surprised that the cars look so stable on track with contact. They're not quite as sensitive to a touch to the rear than perhaps you would expect to see.
No, I mean, it seems like these cars are a lot more forgiving on the contact side than the cars last week as well. But obviously, one thing you got to remember is they're not held down by downforce. So the cornering speed is a lot slower and you're on pure grip. So when you get bumped, it's not as bad as what you'd normally imagine. And just to remind you that it's actually only the top 5 that qualify, mate. So there's a lot of guys that risk. Oh, and that was pretty naughty by Tim Hyman, straight in the door, and now he's given him another one. And this is going to get really, really heated. I could see someone going off here and getting spun around.
He tried this once before, and he's getting much. I'm surprised that DeMarco's car is still on the track there. That was a hefty hit mid-corner.
Yeah, definitely.
He's
and down the
taking
straight.
a different line, though, isn't he, through Luffield? That's the key.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a different line, but let's see if he can make his move. And, oh, that is a big move. That's a big attempt at a move anyway.
But not enough braking zones, surely, to make that work. It's kind of the place where you've got to be very much alongside to make it work. In the braking zones, perhaps, but not there.
No, exactly. And I feel just a bit of frustration creeping in between these two when you watch about the body contact and the amount of contact between them. It looks like they're both frustrated. And they're probably going to get gobbled up by the next two behind them as well.
So thanks to Earl Bamber for paying more attention to the regulations than I do. A classic racing driver, I suppose. Top 5 only go through. So therefore, to qualify, it's 26. Where's Dennis DeMarco going? Heading off to a shortcut to the MotoGP track there, and he's going to have to clumsy coming onto the track, and that's day done for the Italian. What a shame, because he had a great race up to that point. He was on course for 20 points at the very least, and now I think the physicality got to the red mist of the Italian, and that was that.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's what we talk about. You need clean races and these things, and it's exactly the same as what we do is, 24-hour racing, you can be, half a second too slow. And if you just have a clean race, you normally end up on the podium at a minimum. And we're always, that's always drilled into us. And I think it's the case in these races as well. If you manage to stay clean, you will get into that top 5. And we see the guys that really did do well in the first race come a lot further through the field today as well, which I think was just from that sort of very messy first lap. They took big advantage of it.
So in the first race last week, it was 26 points if you were in 5th position. There was contact between Antonov and Wisniewski, and both of them are on the grass, and they're going to lose positions from that. It was a little bit of an optimistic move. Wisniewski was doing the usual racing line and kind of, as you said, diamonding off the corner, and Antonov thought he would stick his nose in.
Yeah, and I think that's big. I think that incident there is big for the points.
Yeah, so 26 points got you through last week, 25 points for the win, and only 5 spaces available, although the other 5 people who got through, who were in the top 10 last week, not one of them is in the race this week. That's why I got confused. I thought they'd qualified and were happily through, but it's not. It's because they just decided not to qualify in the top 20 to get into this race. So Tim Yarshall there is 10th position right now, and he obviously picked up points for 2nd position, but 2nd position is only 20. So it's really important for him to pick up some points. There are points all the way down to 15th place, so he will have some. And we're just kind of trying to work it out right now. But there's lots and lots of bashing and boring going on. Remember, these guys have not just done a 35-minute race or halfway through a 35-minute race. They've already done a 20-minute race. They've already done qualifying, and they had about an hour's worth of practice as well, plus all the hot laps that they've been doing to get into this competition. So they know the track incredibly well. The only thing that's going to upset them is the cars around them and the fact that they're probably getting to a point of overheating now inside wherever they might be racing. I certainly do when it comes to this point of the race.
Yeah, definitely. And Tim Yarshall has had a phenomenal race because after lap 1, he was still down at 24th or 25th, while all his competitors that he's right behind right now were sort of in the top 10 to 15 already. So he's had phenomenal pace throughout this race to carve his way back through the field and put himself in a chance to, basically beat some of the guys that he did in the first race as well. So it's a phenomenal effort from nowhere.
As you said, just be clean, don't get caught up in too many accidents, and at least he got caught up in an accident at the start of the race. Great effort, by the way, to Super GT, who is still in 6th position here. He's got Carly Vega crawling all over the back of him, but he's holding his own. And interestingly, he's now got Antonov and Wisniewski and Yarshall all locked together, and they will all be wanting to come through. But right now, he's holding Carly Vega as we go on board with Carly going into the braking zone. Actually, Vega's losing 1 spot to Wisniewski, 2 now to Antonov, and he just about managed to get in and shut the door before he loses too many more.
Yeah, no, he just lost a spot there. But yeah, Super GT's had a phenomenal race. And where did he finish in the first one? Did he get any points or not?
No, he's down in 24th or 5th, so he had a great starting position in the second one.
I'm curious which one of our basically influencers scores double points for a weekend, because that could be an interesting one, and it is possible with the performances that they're putting in.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone scored points of the influencers in the first race, because Yardier was the best of our influencers, and he just missed out on the top 15. But there is, as you say, certain possibilities here to get some decent points on the board. Will it be enough to get through and qualify? I don't know. It seems to be pretty competitive with Wisniewski, Antonov, and Yarshall within the points now, and Heinemann up into 3rd position. But Fleury in 25 points. He didn't score anything in race 1, so he could still be on the bubble depending on progress being made. Here comes Alejandro Vela. And is that now into the lead? I think he may have done it. Still side by side, runs a little bit deep into Luffield. So Fleury's got the inside line, and now it's a drag race out of Luffield through Woodcote, still side by side, but at least Fleury will have the inside line into Copse.
Yeah, definitely. And as we said, they're going to approach lap traffic. And as they continue to go side by side for the entire lap, which is phenomenal, it's perfect for us, side by side battles for the lead. It's allowing Tim Heinemann to claw his way right back. You'll see him just pop into shot there as well. So with 8 minutes to go, he's got the speed to maybe also gobble up second place in this race.
Just being told by our exec producer that Carly Vega is 65 years of age. So age is no object in sim racing. He's being bullied. Oh no, not now, not when I'm starting to speak about him. Goes around with Luciano Bedin as well, the two of them both spinning. I think it was Tim Yarshall who was finding his way through the slower cars. But in the real world of motorsport, yes, there is a little bit of an age thing, but in sim racing, absolutely not. You can be just as fast at 65 as you can at 60.
I would say, have you heard of Kenny Smith before, speaking about age?
No.
So you should look him up. He's raced every single New Zealand Grand Prix in single-seaters for, I think, the last 55 years. And I think he's now 78 right now. And he's not slow. He's still within like 1 second, 1.5 seconds of the pace of all the young top guns that come out here and race. So speaking of age, that is phenomenal when you see something like that.
I don't really know what Alexei was trying to do there, but got right into the tail of Kevin Siggy going through Copse. Lost a huge amount of time in doing so, and now he's going to lose another spot to the recovering Wisniewski, who's going to go to the inside. But this Alexei did pick up a single point, 15th in race 1, and right now is in a good position for race 2. But I fear that is about to disappear because he's got 3 very, very fast cars behind him. 6 minutes and 30 seconds remaining of this race. Alejandro Vela now leads from Antoine Fleury, and Fleury's under huge pressure from Tim Heinemann. Heinemann leading point scorer now, thanks to his decent finish in race 1 and his podium finish at the moment in this second race as well. Kevin Siggy up to 4th. I would have thought that gives him some decent points as well, Kevin Siggy. He was 5th in the first race, so perhaps we might see Siggy qualifying for another final. He's everywhere right now in terms of sim racing. Must have a very heavy schedule and a very understanding girlfriend. Either way, Antoine Fleury tries the switchback. It's not really something you can do at Brooklands, and it doesn't work out for him. But the Frenchman still there in 3rd position. Wisniewski down the inside of Alexei. That's worked for him. And actually, Wisniewski's recovery drive is a little bit stronger here than Kirill Antonov, who put him into a spin in the first place.
Yep, exactly. And that spin though, that really dented their chances of getting points because they were probably nearly on for a podium, I reckon, or let's say definitely a top four or five. And now they're clawing the way. Oh no, and he's gone around. I've given the commentator's curse. I feel horrible.
We both did, I think, on that last lap. Wisniewski is kind of known for buckling under pressure, and unfortunately, it does look like the same thing's happened again because he was in good point scoring position to qualify. He didn't qualify last week. He got caught up in accidents, and this was an opportunity for him to get through this week. Presumably, next week it will be a little bit easier because you'll lose the cream of the crop. But Wisniewski, there's so much effort that goes into even qualifying for these events that perhaps the focus in driving this car and getting it all sideways will mean that you won't have the practice in the new car, the RSR, that's just been released. And if you want to try it, the only way to do so is to have a go at qualifying for next week's competition around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. I wonder whether his participation in this may have compromised him a little bit, as just ahead, I think Kirill Antonov now moves himself up to fifth.
Yep. And who's still there in the top 10 is Super GT. They're all trying to hand him a top 10 finish, and I think he's going to get it now, which is a phenomenal effort by one of our big influencers.
Yeah, as I said, he's a very, very competent go-kart racer as well. Participates in the British Championship and makes videos on his channel about his participation. Tends to win a lot of them. Hasn't done a huge amount of car racing, but obviously does a lot of videos on sim racing as well. And so great to see him actually performing well. Good little cutback, Tim Yarshall, trying to now find a way past Alexei, the new cork in the bottle, but was no space going through Luffield. He'll have to find another way through. Is Yarshall going to be scoring enough points? I'm not entirely sure he will. It's going to be close, though. Those qualifiers are top 5.
Oh, it's going to be incredibly close. With how far they've managed to get them through, Tim Yarshall has done a fantastic race. Like I said earlier, he was nowhere after the first lap. He had a terrible first lap, and he's got himself back into 7th, and he's got a chance to get into the top 5. He had a good couple last laps. So I really enjoy these reverse grid races. It really, really mixes it up.
And actually, when you take the damage off to just limit it, then it does mean that they can get a bit physical as well, which is nice to see. But they're still kind of playing with inside the rules. That's really nice. There's no kind of purposeful in it. They're all taking this very seriously and providing us, therefore, with great entertainment. You don't feel shortchanged at the end of it when you see people sort of driving outside of their limits and sanity, if you like. And I'm not making too much of a political statement about what we've seen the last couple of days, but sim racers take sim racing seriously, and we still get great entertainment, and that's lovely to see.
Yeah, I said I've started my sim racing, and I'm learning all sorts of things. Like I've already got penalty for speeding the pit lane, crossing the white line, not taking my joker lap correctly and crossing the white line, then taking it again and getting penalised. So yeah, I'm learning that there is quite hard rules and all of this, which is actually really, really good because, to be honest, you could go from the sim racing world and go straight into the real stuff on track and be up to speed with all the rules as well, which is really good that they're so disciplined in all this as well.
Sometimes the rules are even harder to follow in sim worlds than they are in the real world, especially when it comes to track limits. And every time you put your foot wrong and wheel outside of the track limits, suddenly ping, that lap's discounted, got to go again. In the real world, Earl, you just hope that the track marshal hasn't spotted you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, also in America, you've still got the grass to use a bit, and I've learned that iRacing doesn't like it if you touch the grass. So, yeah, it's a different challenge, but it's actually really good because it's fair. It's the same for absolutely everyone. And this race has gone so quickly. We're down to the last minute of the event, and that 35 minutes has gone by like nothing.
I criticised our race director and our executive producer for the choice of a silly short circuit, mainly because I don't really like Silverstone National Circuit to drive around because I'm not very good at it. But it has provided us with absolutely fantastic racing all the way through, and a really great way to show off these cars drifting through some of these corners without making it too hard to get the cars around a lap. And Tim Heinemann looks as though in one more lap, which we will have, that he could actually take victory here. He's on the tail now of Alejandro Vela, and are we going to see a change on the last lap? He doesn't need to. I can see the points just being inputted into our sheet, and he will qualify with 33 points. But actually, as a racer, he will want to win this, and he may well go for it. Into the last couple of corners, he's getting very close to the tail of the Brazilian, and it will be into Brooklands with 2 corners to spare. If it happens, that's where it will happen. Here he is.
Yeah,
in the slipstream.
He's got the run. He's got the run. I reckon he's going to go around the outside.
Here he goes then. He pinches the Brazilian to the inside line. He gets the car very sideways. He looks to try and do the switchback. Can he go around the outside? There's more pushing. There's more physicality. And somehow, Alejandro Vela has held on, and he will take victory. And then therefore, he will also, by the looks of things, qualify through into the finals. If he'd lost that position, he would have not have gone through. But Alejandro wins from Tim Heinemann, who qualifies as well. Antoine Fleury misses out from 3rd position. Kevin Siggy will qualify from 4th position. And then Kirill Antonov will be our highest qualifier in 5th spot. Alexei holding on to 6th. Tim Yarshall in 7th. Wisniewski in 8th. And Alvarez, Super GT, the best of our influences, in a very, very credible 9th spot. Our 65-year-old Carly Vega from France, 10th position. Stemperinski in 11th. Then Renaud Hauser in 12th spot. Luciano Berdin 13th. Honzik 14th. And Urena in 15th. So he did have some influences pick up some points in that second race. And what entertainment. There's Gaming Dave, 21st for him. A few more of our team runners coming across the line with cars that perhaps have been a little bit more battered. Confirmation of the result then. A little bit more spread out than our first race. 10 seconds separating the top 7 positions. Kirill Antonov, Tim Heinemann, Tim Yarshall, Alejandro Vela and Kevin Siggy will be our qualifiers. And would you believe it, Nikodem Wisniewski missing out for a 2nd week on the trot. And that will mean, hopefully, we'll see him next week at Spa-Francorchamps in the RSR. And everybody further down outside of those top 5 positions, we look forward to seeing have another crack at it. Your last chance as well, because our week 4 competition is for finalists and Porsche pros alone. Well, you've never been around the Silverstone National Circuit, Earl. Are you looking forward to having your first crack at it when you have the chance to come to the UK next time, perhaps in one of these old cars?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was phenomenal. The racing was amazing. The battles up and down the field were absolutely incredible.
It was. We'll reflect on it a little bit more whilst we get all of our points in order and get our final graphics sorted. Another chance to reflect on the real world that is out there when all of this is finished and we can get back to proper racing. Well, that wasn't the real world. That was the virtual world, and that was a look at that fantastic car that these guys have been using. Here is a look at the points. Kirill Antonov takes victory at 36 ahead of Tim Heinemann, Tim Yarshall, Alejandro Vele, and Kevin Ziggy. They all qualify. Nikodem Wisniewski just missing out in 6th position. However, things could change. All of these races are still subject to race direction, taking a look through all those passing moves, taking a look through all of the action, and making sure it was all fair. And of course, Tim Heinemann getting himself up into the lead of the race, or into second, sorry, by some very feisty moves on Dennis DeMarco, who at the point was looking at being right up there and qualifying. So race direction, we'll take a look at that, and we will find out anything changes next week. We will be here, same time, same place. If you fancy qualifying, or if you just fancy having a go in the new RSR for Race Room, get yourself into the leaderboard. You'll spot me in something like 560th place, and at some point during the week, you might even spot Earl Bamber qualifying. I will not allow him to beat me, so we will see how it all ends up. He's a newbie to sim racing. He can't beat me, although he is a professional racing driver, so probably will. Earl, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a very early morning for you, but you've been sounding excited and animated as always.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic. Awesome racing. I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go try the new RSR. I'm going to try get into 559th just in front of you so we can talk about it next week.
Awesome. Earl Bamber, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone at Race Room and at Porsche for organising this fantastic, entertaining Community Legends. And we'll see you at Spa-Francorchamps with the RSR next week.